Hello guys. So at the start of the drama, we meet our main male lead, John, who has won the hearts of many girls. He is a prince charming for many because he is not only tall and handsome, but also extremely rich. Today, he is playing a polo match at Jeju Island, where his family has specially come to celebrate his birthday. But here, another girl makes her entry, who is the female lead of our drama, and her name is Jungju. Jungju is a high school student, and at this moment, she is holding a photo in her hand and heading towards the party. She calls John's mom by her name, but just as she is about to reach there, John stops her and pulls her aside. He knows her because she studies at the same school as him, so he asks her why she came all the way here if it's to ruin his birthday. She tells him, "Actually, I have proof. I think I'm your twin sister. You share the same birthday as me, and today is both of our birthdays." She also shows a photo in which her dad and John's mom are sitting together, looking quite close. She notices many qualities in them that were similar, which made her suspect that they might be siblings. John pulls her aside to talk. Actually, John's mom had been married 3 times, and she had 3 children, each from a different father. While they are talking, John's mom and older sister come upstairs. Jungju hides, but the photo is left behind on the table, which she forgot to take. John's sister notices the photo and asks their mom, "Who is this person in the photo with you?" In order to get an answer to this question, Jungju came all this way. She finally gets the answer when John's mom says, "I don't know who this is. I don't even remember their face," and throws the photo into the dustbin. This means that Jungju, who came looking for her mother, is now disappointed, as neither this lady is her mother, nor John, her twin brother. John feels pity for her, and as he leaves, he says, "I'm leaving. The guests must be waiting for me. If you want, you can cry your heart out." Jungju finishes crying, and as she is about to leave, John comes in front of her, gives her a piece of cake, and wishes her happy birthday. He also gives her an expensive watch as a gift, which he had received but didn't like due to its color. He tells her, "I know you're going through financial troubles, so you can keep this watch as a gift from me. It might even cover your semester fee." He also tells her that he is going abroad for his studies and doesn't know when they will meet again. But before leaving, he says, if I had stayed any longer with you, I would have fallen for you all over again. So when I return after finishing my studies and we meet again in life, I want you to be the same so that I fall for you once more." Jungju then tells him, "As rich and handsome as you are, I don't think I stand a chance. So I advise you to stay rude and tough enough that no other girl can stick with you, and maybe then I'll have a chance." And with that, their paths separate. The story then fast forwards 10 years. We see Jungju living a struggling life. She completed her education somehow, working part-time jobs, but her stressful life hasn't ended. Despite everything, she's still working for an inner garments brand, but she doesn't have much respect there. Meanwhile, our hero is now a hot and trending chef at Jeju Island and runs his own small restaurant. Jungju, after saving all her money, decides to invest in a business. Today, her cousin goes to Jeju Island to check out some properties for her, convincing her that a great property is available to open a cafe. However, it turns out to be an old, run-down place, and in exchange, he plans to give her a small hut. Jungju, thinking it's a good deal, is happy and starts planning for her business. She also plans to save the remaining money for her wedding. She has a long-term boyfriend, but she's worried because he hasn't called her in a while. She wonders why he's been so busy with his business store. Meanwhile, John is at his cafe, where any girl who sees the handsome chef cooking falls for him. His photos are constantly being posted on social media, but he is a free spirit and only opens his restaurant when he feels like it. He then hears about his class reunion party and rushes to it, excited to see a girl he had a first love with, named Won, who he had met on Jeju Island. Coincidentally, Jungju, along with her friend, comes to the restaurant for dinner, but they don't get to meet. Jungju, however, often thinks about John. She often remembered the promise they made to each other, but she thought it was just a teenage promise from high school, one that didn't matter anymore. Still, she couldn't help but think that the charming prince on the white horse might one day come back into her life. Meanwhile, Jungju's life took a downturn. She found out that her cousin and best friend had betrayed her and ruined her financially. She was now in a rush to catch a flight to Jeju Island. The chances of getting a seat on the flight were slim, but a couple sitting near her began to fight. Jungju enjoyed the scene, praying that they wouldn't go on their honeymoon and that she would get their seat instead. The couple's ring fell, and she deliberately hit it to make the girl angrier. Meanwhile, John, who was also about to go back to Jeju, was sitting nearby. His seat was also uncertain, and he was watching the couple's argument. In the end, both Jungju and John managed to get the seats. As they were on their way, John said to her, "You really kept your promise. You look cool and dashing, but I'm sorry I couldn't keep mine." Jungju responded, "What a stupid promise. I don't even remember it. It was just a kid's game." But during the journey, she started feeling very sick and had a habit of eating mint candies. Her packet broke, so she filled the candies into an empty box, not realizing which medicine box it was. When they reached the airport, John offered her a lift and told her that he was running a restaurant. He gave her hope, saying that business and investments were booming there, and suggested she should start a business there because the opportunities were great. However, his own situation was bad. He had even borrowed money to open the restaurant, as his older brother, who managed the family business, had refused to give him any funds. And now, a man had come to demand his money back. John tried to convince the man, saying, "This girl you see here is going to be my wife. If you tell my brother about me borrowing money, it will cause so much tension and ruin the whole event. Please, wait until after my wedding." But this information soon reached Jungju, and she started saying to him, "I never thought you'd be so deceitful and so manipulative. Why did you use me?" With that, she grabbed her bag from his car and left, but she forgot the box of mint candies there. Just then, she noticed an amusement point, and there, she saw her boyfriend, Han, who was with another girl. She was shocked to see this and immediately ran after him, chasing him on a horse. Finally, she caught up with him and realized that her boyfriend had betrayed her. He hadn't gone to Japan as he had said. Instead, he had gotten married and had come here on his honeymoon. Hearing this, she felt like attacking him like in the old days and killing him. But in the end, she fell off her horse and landed in the mud. She tried to clean herself by a river, but her sneaker was swept away by the fast-flowing water. She couldn't catch it, but someone from the other bank grabbed it. It was Jian. Jian felt a lot of sympathy for her and came over to say, "Look, today's a bad day for you, and for me too. Why don't you let me treat you? Come, let's go to my restaurant and have a meal." After hearing this, she agreed to spend her birthday with him, as the food was free. While Jian was preparing food for her, a few more customers arrived, and they turned out to be none other than Jungju's cousin, Gimon, and his girlfriend. As soon as Jungju saw them, she became furious. She started asking them, "Was it really you two who signed the contract? You were the ones I came here to meet." They replied, "Yes, we did, and the place is very nice inside." As soon as she entered the house, the situation inside was so bad that only her screams and cries could be heard from outside. Seeing this, John's sympathy for her deepened, and he thought to himself, "This poor girl hasn't had a better life in 10 years. Meanwhile, she was sitting outside, opening the box and taking the medicine. John found out what the medicine was for and realized it was for cancer. Seeing her taking the pills, he felt even more pity for her. Not only had she been betrayed, but she was also suffering from cancer. He thought to himself, how worse could life get for someone? She decided to go back to her job and start earning again, even though she was leaving. But before she left, John packed lunch for her and told her, "You must come back again." She replied, "There's no need to come here anymore. I won't have time." Hearing this, John felt that maybe she was about to die soon, and that was why she seemed so hopeless. As she was talking, she reached home and thought she would get some fresh air outside to refresh herself. However, her window faced her neighbor's house, and her neighbor always gave her this kind of view, like flirty and bold moves, as a gift. She thought that taking fresh air like this was worse than staying inside and suffocating in her room. We also find out that Jungju had been fired from her job. Now, she had no chance left. The next day, she packed all her belongings and went back to the same place. She had started working on renovating a building that was right next to John's restaurant. When John saw her there, he was surprised. She told him that she wanted to try her luck. The place was a mess, and she was trying to figure out how to fix it and make it livable. Soon, they heard screaming from inside. John rushed in and found out that there was a snake. He was terrified and ran out. But after a while, they realized it wasn't a snake, but a pipe lying around. There was a time when Jian had tried to help her, but he got injured himself. Then, he was amazed by her bravery, as she had checked that pipe as it out herself. She said, "What would have happened? If it bit me, I would have died." He thought to himself, she must be thinking that dying from cancer is no big deal, so dying from this snake bite wouldn't be a problem. He also thought that a girl like her would die struggling here and become even poorer, and all the blame for this would fall on him when she died. When they first met, John had told her big things about how tourism in the area would grow and how they would make a lot of money. But in reality, nothing of that sort was happening. Meanwhile, she wanted to use the bathroom, and Jian told her she could use his house. Her belongings were lying on the street, and he told her not to worry about it, as no one would steal anything here. When she went into his house to use the washroom, his elder brother unexpectedly arrived. That lone man had sent a photo of the girl to John's brother and had told him that his brother was about to get married and had borrowed a lot of money from him. John's brother had come to check on things, and by coincidence, the girl was in his house at that moment. When he saw this, he confirmed that the two of them were indeed going to get married. The elder brother sat down and talked to Jian for a while, telling him that no one could cheat anyone in real life, that Jian was hardworking and understood the value of money and how hard it was to earn. As soon as they step outside, Jian warns his troublesome brother, telling him that until he repays Mr. Gang the money he owes, he can't leave Jizhou Island. He also informs him that he has blocked all his credit cards. Poor Jungju, when she steps out, finds that her luggage is missing. She starts yelling and says, "You told me no one steals here." John calmly responds, "Where else would your luggage go? The police must have seen it and taken it to the station. Go there." She rushes to the police station and finds someone standing there with her luggage. It's Mr. Hung, the second main lead, and not just any small-time officer, but the mayor of Jizhou Island. He is a kind and sweet man. When he meets Jungju and learns that she's here to stay, he encourages her to mingle with the locals and even takes her to a meeting. She talks about her old job and offers some undergarments she's selling at low prices. However, when Hung sees the brand, he gets a little flustered and leaves quickly, hiding his face. She watches the sunrise, and it feels like she's fulfilling the wish of a girl who was about to die. She's making a wish while watching the sunrise, and John, looking at it, starts making a wish as well. The next day, Youngju starts wondering why John is doing so much for her. What she didn't know was that he was just doing it out of sympathy, as he misunderstood that she was dying. Meanwhile, she discovers a blog post that reveals John left his restaurant because he met his first love on Jizhou Island during his 19th birthday. Jungju realizes that she was the one who met him there, which means she's his first love. After reading this, she becomes so shy that Jaeon arrives and notices her change in behavior. He asks her why her color has drained and why her heartbeat is faster. She's embarrassed. Then, when he finds out she's fixing her roof, he offers to help, as he believes that a sick girl shouldn't be doing such physical work. Earlier, John had also invited Jungju for dinner, intending to tell her that if she invested here, she'd go bankrupt. But then, he gets a call from Wan, learning that she's coming to Jizhou Island tonight, and he becomes excited about preparing a special dinner. He quickly drops everything to prepare for it. He could have made the food at his restaurant, but he didn't have money to buy expensive wine because his brother had blocked his credit cards. So, he decides to sell the golden key he found among Youngju's things to buy the wine. However, when he goes to the airport to meet Wan, he finds out that she has deceived him. She lies, saying she didn't arrive and has gone to meet her brother, who owns a big resort in Jizhou. She's selfish, and for her, her brother is a better option than Jian. So, she decides to meet him instead. When Jungju returns, she finds out that preparations for a special dinner are underway at the restaurant, and she's thrilled, thinking that she must be his first love. But as soon as she learns that Jian's first love is arriving and that he went to the airport to pick up Wan, she feels betrayed. Jungju is shocked to hear about the name and realizes everything was a delusion. Jian didn't love her, but someone else. Heartbroken, she silently leaves. When she goes back to fix her roof, she finds out that Jian had abandoned the task. Soon, the rain starts, and she's left collecting water in a bucket beneath the leaking roof. Hungry and frustrated, she sleeps in her small, broken place, as Jian had promised her dinner, but never kept the promise. She also realizes that her golden key has been stolen by him. This makes her lose her patience, and she directly confronts John, asking him why he stole her money, used her, and lied about marrying her. She demands her golden key back. John, trying to stay calm, says he'll give it back slowly, but when she continues to shout, he also loses his temper. He was already upset because he had seen Wan go to his brother's restaurant, deliberately avoiding him. His heart was broken, and after drinking, he had gone to sleep. Now, John tells her that she only wants money and throws some coins at her. This insults Youngju so much that she silently walks away. However, after some time, John realizes that his actions were wrong. He follows her and apologizes. When he sees her trying to fix her roof again, he grabs her and pulls her down, both falling together. In front of them, the roof they were working on blows away. Jungju is left speechless, crying. Next, John realizes his mistake, and first John dries her hair, and then he begins preparing food for her. As they sit and eat together, Jungju asks him if he was supposed to have dinner with his first love. John admits that she didn't show up, Jungju realizes why his mood was so off. He then tells her that he found out who his father was on his 19th birthday, the same day he met her on Jeju Island. He shares his painful life story, and both of them end up crying together. As they cry, Jungju says that her only wish is to open a restaurant or a lovely cafe, but now even her roof is gone, and she can't afford to rebuild it. John asks if that's her last wish, and he promises to fulfill it. He tells her that he owes 50 million because of the debts he can't repay, and his brother won't give him the money. He offers her to take his restaurant, which is in his name, and put it in her name as collateral. Jungju, with the savings she has, agrees, but asks if he will back out. He reassures her that he won't, and they both sign a contract with their thumbprints. John wishes her the best, saying that this restaurant will be hers until the end of her days. Jeon thought that Jungju would probably not last long and would die in a year or two, and the restaurant would be his again. Meanwhile, there showed a man, Jeon's brother, was sitting on the beach, smoking, when he accidentally fell into the water. Just then, someone appeared and saved him. She seemed like the princess of his dreams, and in gratitude, he gave his heart to her. She was the village's diving teacher, Miss Kim. At that time, John had gone to meet Won. Won tells him that she couldn't meet him the previous day because she had been at his brother's resort for an interview, and she had gotten the job. She would be working in Jeju and would frequently visit his restaurant. Jeon, thinking about how to win Jungju back, knew that somehow he had to make her understand. Jungju, on the other hand, was focused on managing the business. But as she entered, she found John cooking in the kitchen. He told her that there were many tasks at the restaurant that needed completion, and until they were done, he couldn't leave. Just then, customers arrived, and the conversation was interrupted. They worked all day, exhausted, and when it was time to sleep, they found that there was only one room available, and John's bag was in it. Jungju wondered what this situation was about since John was supposed to leave. John then requested her to allow him to stay there since he had no other place to go, asking her to show some mercy. He promised to adjust somewhere. Jungju told him that there was only one room, and he was not allowed to stay. Jeon went downstairs, but returned to tell her that there were strange noises coming from the animals outside, and it was bothering him. She retorted, saying that she could be harsher, but eventually, she felt some sympathy for him. They ended up sitting together, and John shared that he still had some debts left, and until he paid them off, his brother wouldn't clear his things, including his home and credit cards. John told her, "Look, we are friends. Why bring business into this? We can share the profit, and if you don't agree, then let me stay here for a few days. You be the boss, and I'll be your employee. That's how we can manage." After this, they went to the market to buy some restaurant supplies. While shopping, Jungju noticed an apron she liked but didn't buy because it was too expensive. When they returned to the restaurant, she said she would go pick up seashells herself to save money. She preferred getting something for free instead of spending money. Just as she was about to leave, she suddenly heard something behind her. John stops Jungju and lovingly puts the apron on her. As he gets so close to her, putting it on with such care, Jungju starts blushing and quickly runs away. Later, while she is digging for seashells, she struggles with the task, unable to do it properly. Mayor Huang, passing by, notices her and starts teaching her, but despite all his efforts, she still doesn't get it right, and he scolds her. At that moment, she looks at him closely and says, "Why do I feel like I've seen you somewhere before?" Mayor Huang quickly hides his face and walks away. Meanwhile, a tourist who is passing by snaps a photo of Jungju while she is collecting seashells and posts it online. Her former colleagues spot the photo and start gossiping, thinking that she's now working as a laborer, collecting shells every day. Jungju, exhausted from working hard, realizes that there aren't enough customers and starts thinking about doing a promotion. She wants to bring John along for the promotion, but John seems lost in his own world. That day, Won was arriving, so John went to pick her up and also took some money from the restaurant to fill up the gas tank. Won had already arrived and started her work. She gave everyone the impression that there was something romantic going on between the company's president and her, that he had fallen for her. However, in reality, John was a very serious person, and there was nothing between them. As John returned, he got into another argument with Jungju because she was doing a cheap promotion, but Jeon preferred everything to be luxurious and expensive. She told him that they had saved money for promotions, but Jeon argued that they should focus on luxury. He had saved some money but wanted to use it to buy seafood so he could prepare a fancy dinner for everyone. Despite all this, John, in a huff, left, saying, "Do you think I have no place to stay? I've become poor." But that's not true. He tried to check in at his brother's resort, but his brother firmly denied him entry, telling him that he would only learn life's lessons when he faced the tough realities of life. Jungju, after struggling with the seashells, decides to sell the damaged ones in another market. While she is carrying a heavy tub, her phone falls, and at the same time, she gets a call from Pank, telling her that he's in a lot of pain and doesn't know what will happen to him. Mayor Huang arrives and helps her out, offering her some noodles afterward. Jungju then goes to buy the expensive seafood, wanting to impress John, and heads straight to his resort. Meanwhile, Pank calls John to inform him that Jungju was in pain earlier and is coming to meet him. At this point, John's anger begins to soften as he learns that she's in pain, and his heart grows softer. Meanwhile, this is when Jungju and Wan have their first meeting, and during this, Wan spills her coffee. She asks Jungju to clean it, but Jungju initially refuses. However, when Jungju starts cleaning, some former colleagues from her old company arrive and start taunting her, saying that she's now doing menial labor after being fired. Jungju, being kind-hearted, quietly listens to their jabs. John, who overhears everything, shows up in his stylish car, and in front of everyone, he pretends that Jungju is his boss, and that he's just a simple employee of hers. He praises her for running a great restaurant while being humble. This moment of support helps Jungju regain some respect, and later that evening, they go to the restaurant for dinner. John cooks and serves a great meal to his former colleagues, but he does this in an attempt to elevate Jungju's status in front of them. Meanwhile, Mayor Huang arrives, and when he sees the former employees and hears their company name mentioned, he gets embarrassed and quickly tries to leave. But before he can escape, he's caught, and the employees tease him, revealing that he used to be a model for their company's best-selling underwear line. Alone with John later, Huang admits in embarrassment that he did modeling for underwear when he was younger, and that he's very ashamed of it now. As they talk, Jian starts feeling jealous and warns Jungju about the village tradition. He tells her that when local women see a boy and girl getting too close, they'll start matchmaking them. He asks her to keep her distance from Huang. Afterward, Jian suggests that they have dinner together, continuing their relationship and support for each other. Jungju, feeling irritated and jealous, watches as John and Wan enjoy their meal together. She feels uncomfortable seeing John so happy with Wan, so she decides to sit with them as a third wheel. But when John notices that Wan is feeling awkward due to Jungju's presence, he quickly makes an excuse to send her away. Jungju, frustrated, heads to her room, but Jian stops her, saying that if Wan sees them in the same room, she might misunderstand. He suggests she go outside for a walk and get some exercise. Jungju, even angrier, reluctantly goes outside. It's cold, and she ends up sitting by herself, sipping on a drink. Meanwhile, Huang spots her and approaches, suggesting they talk. Jungju, feeling tense, responds that the villagers will start gossiping about them if they are seen alone. Huang agrees and convinces her to join him and a group of elders instead. They chat for a while, but Jian can't stop thinking about Jungju. He's worried about her health, especially since she didn't wear a jacket and has been out for so long. Wan starts to feel neglected by John's constant concern for Jungju and wonders why he's not paying attention to her. Meanwhile, John gets increasingly anxious and wants to send Wan away so Jungju doesn't have to wait for him. He tells her that there's no late-night taxi service and he'll arrange for a driver to take her. But when the driver arrives and takes Wan, she soon realizes John lied to her about the taxi service. As the night drags on, John desperately tries to reach Jungju, but she's not responding to his messages. He eventually finds her sitting with Huang, drinking. John, frustrated, takes his anger out by throwing a stone, but it hits his own foot. He throws the stone into the water in frustration, attracting attention from onlookers. Embarrassed, John hides his face and runs off, but Jungju, sensing his arrival, begins to figure out what's going on. When she returns home, she's ready to confront him. They had arrived, but he firmly declined. "No," he said, and she told him, "Today, I found out from the village elders that you don't get along with anyone here because you don't help with cleaning or community services." A little later, she started sneezing, and John became concerned that she might be cold. When she came out after showering, she saw that green tea was ready for her, and he told her to take care of herself and not hang out too much with Huang. An employee of his brother's came and took Jian's sports car, giving him a bigger electric car instead. John didn't want to accept it because its speed was too slow, but Jungju convinced him, saying, "Look, it has a lot of space, and we can carry a lot of items for our restaurant." John, who had already softened up, agreed immediately. This employee later informed his brother about how stubborn John had been, but gave in to the girl's request. Later, we see Jaeon going to the seashore to collect shells, thinking about how Jungju is ill and working so hard. Meanwhile, Huang notices the medicine coming out of Jungju's bag. He asks, "Are you very ill?" But she replies, "No, it's just an empty bottle. I use it to store my mint pills." Huang now understands the truth. This is why Jian cares for her so much. He thinks, let it happen. This way, she will improve. Additionally, we learn that there is a diving school run by a lady who once saved John Big Brother's life. Mr. President had given his life to her that day. Jungju applies for admission to this school. Later, at their restaurant, they are preparing dinner because some guests from the resort were supposed to come. John receives a call from Wan, who asks where he is. He says he's at the market, and she agrees to come there. Hearing this, John sends Youngju away, saying, "You will get tired." But Youngju sees through his excuse and realizes that he is sending her away because of Wan. That whole day, Jungju is in a bad mood and doesn't speak properly to John. However, later, John notices something on her phone. The picture had arrived, sent by her ex-colleagues, with Huang modeling in the same underwear. Upon seeing it, John burst out laughing and said, "Look, he's acting all high and mighty. I'll share this in the community group." But Jungju firmly stopped him, saying, "You won't interfere in my friends' matters, and I don't comment on your friends either." We then see President Song, who also goes to apply at the diving school, where his dream princess, Miss Kim, is the diving instructor. Meanwhile, his colleagues ask Wan if something is going on between her and Jian, whether they are boyfriend and girlfriend. Wan clearly denies it. Upon hearing this, John's heart broke, but he kept himself composed. John, feeling heartbroken, is deeply saddened by it, and Youngju feels sorry for him. As she is about to leave, she stops Wan and says, "Now I'm sure that you have nothing to do with John, so you can't leave here without paying." Wan replies, "What kind of mean behavior is this?" Youngju responds, "I'm the owner of this restaurant, and I know you're toying with John's feelings. He becomes crazy every time he hears you're coming, but you don't have any feelings for him." She also tells Wan, "Yes, I live here, upstairs." But Wan doesn't seem to care. Just then, Jian arrives and tells Jungju to be quiet, and Wan leaves, saying, "I'll never come here again." Inside, Jian asks Jungju, "Why did you do that?" Jungju replies, "I couldn't watch you become more foolish and crazy." Jian says, "I know Wan has no feelings for me. What can I do? I want to be a fool in her hands. I know she sometimes comes back to check on me, and she will still come." He moves forward, intending to kiss her, all to show Wan. As soon as Wan sees this, she begins to leave, but John steps back, not kissing her. He does ask, "Why did you close your eyes? I was just playing a part. Were you really starting to like me?" She responds, "That can't be true. I just felt sorry for you." He asks, "Why did you feel pity for me? Are you falling for me?" She says, "Oh, is that so? Then let's finish what was left unfinished." She tries to forcefully kiss him, but then she gives him a strong push and leaves, saying, "Don't even think about it." After a short while, John starts to worry about her. He finally asks, "You didn't eat anything. Should I make something for you?" She stands up and replies. Youngju says, "Look, it's midnight, and you're concerned about my hunger, offering to cook for me? If you keep doing this, I'll fall for you. Otherwise, just leave." Hearing this, John immediately runs away. The next day, it was community service day. John, who never volunteered for cleaning, reluctantly agrees to go with Youngju and works hard at it. He gets into an argument with a child, but then the grandmother steps in, blaming John for mistreating her innocent grandson. Jungju arrives just in time to protect John. John hides behind her, like a child hiding behind his aunt after mischief. A fight breaks out between Jungju and the grandmother. Jungju is very worried because she is going to be selected as a judge and will decide whether she gets admission to the diving school. John becomes worried for her and thinks, "I hope this is not her last wish, and I wonder if she'll be able to fulfill it." To make peace with the grandmother, John tries to reconcile by secretly listening to her complaints. The grandmother's grandchildren refuse to eat home-cooked food and insist on dining out at a restaurant. So, John apologizes and offers to treat them to a 5-star meal at his restaurant. He cooks for them personally, making the children happy and winning over the grandmother as well. But as soon as Jian sees Jungju returning with Haeyang, his mood sourly changes. He wants to tell her that he knows her secret, but Jungju manages to stop him and takes him inside. John is frustrated that she's spending time with Haeyang, and he feels like he's been foolish to care so much for her. The next day, Youngju has her interview at the diving school, and Jeon's brother also arrives, though he avoids meeting Jeon. When they notice that Jungju has gone inside, they quickly call his sister, asking her to bring John out, offering him the incentive of getting his credit card back. As soon as John hears from his sister that he's getting his card back, he excitedly rushes to the location, completely forgetting that he had told Jungju to come outside and wait for him. When Jungju arrives, he's nowhere to be found. Jungju has to take the bus to get around. John had told her he would be back soon, just going to the resort, so she goes shopping and buys a lotion for him. the same lotion he used to secretly use from her. She waits for him at the cafe where they had planned to meet. But when John uses his credit card, he finds out that Haeyoung is also there and wants to make amends. John starts talking to Haeyoung, who convinces him to go shopping with her. Meanwhile, Youngju waits for him, but by the time he arrives, it's quite late. She feels jealous seeing both of them together and tries to stop Jian, making an excuse about work at the restaurant. But Jian doesn't stop and tells her that he has already booked the tickets and will be back soon. Jungju watches them leave, feeling helpless. John and Wob spend the whole day shopping, but throughout, John's mind and heart are with Jungju. He doesn't want to stay with Won and feels guilty. Won senses this, but tries to keep him engaged. When John finally returns, Jungju is upset and tells him that now that he has his credit card, there's no reason for him to stay. She walks away, but John follows her to her room and explains that he can't leave because his credit card limit is low and he needs the money to survive. Jungju angrily accuses him of doing all this because of Won, and she tells him to go ahead and start his life with her. Meanwhile, Hwang informs Jungju that she no longer needs to worry about the diving test results because the grandmother has been convinced not to interfere. Her anger starts to fade, and she goes to thank Jian. However, when Jian sees Haeyoung standing there, his mood worsens again. Jian, feeling jealous, confronts Jungju saying, "Why are you making things so hard? John is right here in front of you." Haeyoung's comment about Jungju being uncomfortable with John's actions makes her quite upset. She even packs her bag, and although John sees it, he doesn't pay much attention. The next morning, when John realizes that Jungju is gone, he becomes anxious. John employee had mischievously told him that Jungju left for the train station and might have left for good. Hearing this, Jian rushes after her, pulls her bag away from her, and forces her to come back with him. He tells her that if she's upset, he'll make things right. Jungju responds, saying she isn't angry, she's just going to a friend's wedding. It turns out that Jian employee had orchestrated this to bring them together and resolve their differences. As they travel, Jian notices her hair and suggests she should let her hair down for the wedding, but it was a little frizzy. He even says she should cover it up because her haircut doesn't look good. As they spend the day, John calls her, urging her to come back quickly, warning her that the weather would turn bad, though it was a lie, as it was sunny and clear. Jungju, not happy with John's behavior, decides to get a nice haircut. While on a bus ride, Jungju is torn between her feelings for John and the growing feelings from Haeyoung, who is still trying to get her attention. Haeyoung pursues the bus on his bicycle, sweating in the heat, but when Jungju notices him, he pretends it's just a coincidence. Just as Jian arrives, Haeyoung informs Jungju that her admission has been confirmed, and Jungju happily high-fives him. Seeing this, John becomes incredibly jealous and pulls Jungju in for a hug instead, repeating her name to emphasize his possessiveness. He tries to make Haeyoung jealous by calling her Jungju repeatedly, hoping to get a reaction, but even that isn't enough to satisfy him. Jian, feeling guilty, starts calling Jungju by the name he used when he was modeling, but when Haeyoung gets embarrassed by it, Jian immediately covers up, apologizing and saying that he didn't know it was a secret. When Jungju reaches upstairs, her mood improves as she sees the diving suit she had wanted, which John bought for her during a sale. She thanks him and gives him the lotion she had bought for him in return. After a while, John approaches her, complaining that he can't sleep because his stomach feels upset. Jungju, feeling sympathy, starts giving him a massage and, during this, confesses that she feels like she's developing feelings for him. Jian is taken aback by this, and, as a result, his indigestion improves. Jungju quickly assures him that it was just a joke, and she was only trying to help him feel better. On John the first day of his diving course, John says goodbye to her, jokingly asking her to give him a kiss as a reward when she completes her first dive. Meanwhile, Won starts plotting to separate Jungju and John. First, she tries to provoke Jungju's brother, but he ignores her. Next, she goes to Jungju's sister, Hira, and tells her about Jungju's relationship with Jian, implying that she is not worthy of him. When Hira sees Jungju and Jian's room, she becomes angry, realizing that Won was right. Before leaving, she tells Jungju to give her brother a card, allowing him to check into the resort whenever he wants. When Jian returns, he starts complaining about having to do so much work. Jungju, trying to make things easier for him, tells him that he won't have to work as hard or feel uncomfortable anymore at the restaurant. She gives him a card that Hira left, explaining that it's for him to stay at the resort. John, surprised by the offer, takes the card, realizing that he no longer has any excuses to avoid staying at the resort, and heads off, still conflicted about his feelings as he watches Jungju. Jungju, upon hearing this, tries to stay composed, but but feels her emotions rising. As the story unfolds, we see John still struggling with his feelings for her, despite having everything he needs to enjoy life. He becomes conflicted, even though he's provided with every luxury and the promise of no financial worries. His heart feels empty without her presence. Meanwhile, Jungju, feeling similarly lonely, decides to visit him. However, when she arrives, she sees Jion talking to Wan, which leads her to believe that Jion is happy without her. She leaves a message for him at the reception and rushes away. Jion, feeling guilty, runs after her, but by the time he reaches, Jungju is already gone. He starts to miss her, and Hira, Jion's sister, secretly arranged for him to stay at the resort. Realizing he has no excuses left, he goes to his big brother that is president and asks if he can stay at the resort. The president refuses and sends him back, telling him to straighten out his life. John, feeling down but determined, packs his bags and heads back. When he returns to Jungju's place, he finds her asleep and, in a tender moment, attempts to wake her. As she stirs, she falls into his lap, causing his heart to race. The next morning, Jion opens up to Jungju, revealing that her brother had caught him and forced him out of the resort. He admits that he has nowhere else to go. However, Pank later reveals that he had lied, and his return was because he cared deeply for Jungju. This revelation lingers in Jungju's mind, and she begins to reflect on her own feelings. She jokes with him, saying that without him, things have gone wrong. He points out that the vegetables in the fridge have gone bad because she's been too busy to use them. He claims that she can't run the restaurant without him. As he works alongside her, Jungju begins to blush, realizing the impact he has on her. Meanwhile, at Mayor Hong's office, others have noticed the growing bond between Jungju and him, believing that there might be more to their relationship. Some even start matchmaking, convinced that they belong together. They invite John to a dinner at his restaurant, with the intention of bringing him and Jungju closer together. In this part of the story, the romance and struggle between Jungju and John come to the forefront. On one hand, John is trying to express his feelings, while on the other hand, the growing distance and confusion between Wan and Jungju also emerge. At this point in the story, the competition between John and Wan is clear, as both are struggling for the same girl. It was a coincidence that Jungju posed in the same way John used to during modeling, and this helped him win. However, Jungju had not fully understood her feelings, and she made the wrong assumption. Thinking that Jion didn't like her, Jungju realized that she had to choose between the two, and when she pointed towards Jion, she got her answer, but she did not accept it. Then, Wan's story comes into focus, as he was trying to get closer to Jion's brother because he had all the power of the company. Wan also confessed his feelings to Jion's brother, but he rejected her, making it clear that he was only interested in Miss Kim, diving teacher. Next, a conversation between Jungju and Huang is shown, where Huang directly tells her who she should like. Jungju gets confused about her feelings and thinks that she likes John, but it's not entirely clear. Meanwhile, John comes with the necklace for Jungju, but she tells him to give it to a girl he likes because she feels John made the right decision. John consults doctor for Jungju health. He showed that medicine case to doctor. Then, doctor said that she should get her treatment done, otherwise she will be in trouble. Then, John arrives there and tells her that he will give her a necklace, and also says that he has to attend a party and asks her to be his partner. Afterward, he mentions that he wants to take her to a special place as well. Upon hearing this, Jungju becomes overjoyed. He then takes her with him to the party, and through a bit of investigation, it is discovered that Jaeon actually brought her there to meet a professor who specializes in cancer treatment. When Wan asks, she learns that Jaeon is taking such good care of her because he believes Jungju is sick. Taking advantage of this situation, she goes and tells Jungju that Jaeon is just feeling sorry for her. Meanwhile, she starts provoking John, telling him that these people were making him crazy to gain his sympathy. She was waiting exactly where John had called her to meet, but surprisingly, Jungju is shocked when John arrives and hugs her. The happiest thing for her was realizing that Jungju is perfectly fine. She then says to him, "You felt sorry for me, and that's why you gave me the restaurant. Now I feel guilty. I don't think I deserve it, because you said it was mine as long as I'm alive, and I intend to live long." But Jaeon says to her, "Don't think like that. We can work together in that restaurant, and we will keep doing this." That night, she starts packing her things and notices that he is asleep. As she picks up the contract to leave, she says, "I don't have any rights over this, so I'm leaving. You were so sweet and kind to me that I've fallen in love with you." Hearing this, John, who had been awake, quickly turns and sits up, saying, "What's this? You don't have cancer. You have a heart problem. Now that you've confessed, let me hear the whole truth. Say it." But what does she do? She just keeps blushing. In the meantime, He sits her down in front of him and says, "Look, I won't let you go now. You're seriously ill, and it's a heart problem. I will treat you. I was sweet before, and now I'll act rude so you'll hate me. But whatever happens, you will stay here." After that, he directly goes to his sister's place, where Juan is, and overhears her conversation. He starts saying, "Whatever she's saying is all lies. I won't hear a word against Jiangju. She's fooling me, misusing me, but you can't do this with Jiangju." His sister Hira also tells him, "What's this? Since when have you become so straightforward?" Little did she know that he had fallen in love with Jiangju. After scolding Juan for a while, he returns to the restaurant. Jiangju then tells him, "I'll work here in the restaurant, which you own, with full dedication." He had figured out that she owned most of the restaurant, and that he had paid very little, so now he didn't feel like this was fair. In response, she tells him, "I did this wholeheartedly, but now my feelings for you have faded, and I'll make sure to end them." Hearing this, John smiles widely. Later, that night, he asks her to sleep on the main bed, but she says, "No, I prefer to sleep below, and the view from here is much better." The next day, when they went to the diving school, they had an interview with Mayor Hung. Jiangju was standing with them, and after that, they brought the reporter with them to have dinner at the restaurant. Watching this, John becomes extremely jealous. Pank observes their chemistry and thinks, "They look so good together, like Jiangju is the mayor's wife." Then, a reporter standing behind overhears a part of their conversation, and the next day, during the news broadcast, Jiangju is referred to as Mrs. Mayor. As soon as Jian sees this, he becomes furious. He starts behaving very rudely with her and asks, "Tell me, how much balance is left now?" Upon hearing this, Jiangju starts thinking that the reason the balance keeps increasing is because of him, and she says, "It's at 10 now." She had started loving him even more. One day, John sees Juan with another guy. This was the same person with whom she had once broken off her engagement. But John finds out that the guy would misuse her, so he follows her to protect her. He stops her from getting into his car. She didn't want him to follow her. She was very greedy and even injured her hand while trying to get away, but Jian somehow pulls her out. In anger, she leaves, and Jiangju sees all of this. She approaches and starts caring for her, asking if the injury on her hand was painful. John replies, "Yes, it's really painful. No matter what she does to me, I don't want her to get hurt or misused by anyone else." Later in the evening, Haeyoung comes to meet Jiangju and he proposes her and says, "I will keep your feelings happy and treat you well. Please come to me." John overhears this, and John becomes heartbroken. When Jiangju enters, she asks him if the pain is still there, and he says, "It's even worse than before." The pain wasn't in his hand but in his heart. She leaves, telling him, "You're so sweet to me, but I've become rude to you. Now, you stay rude to me too." But John stops her and says, "No, I'll stay sweet, even sweeter than before. So you can't stop loving me." At this point, Jiangju starts thinking that John's actions suggest that he likes her. She dreams that one day he will confess his love for her, but she doesn't understand why. Despite treating her so well, John has never proposed or openly said that he loves her. She gives him many signals and waits for a long time, but eventually, she decides to move on because John never took the initiative. One day, the villagers arranged for the mayor and Jiangju to go to the theater alone. John finds out about it and says, "If I win in rock, paper, scissors, you'll go with me." To his surprise, he says he'll play paper. Jiangju, a little frustrated with him, intentionally loses to him and goes to the movie. She still didn't know that instead of Pank, they would send Huang there. But before Huang arrives, John comes back and says, "Let's play rock, paper, scissors again. And this time, I will play paper, and this Jiangju lose," and they go together to the market, strolling and taking photos. Afterward, he buys beautiful flowers. Actually, he was taking the flowers to his mother's memorial since it was the anniversary of her death. Jiangju was very special to him, which is why he took her along. But he tells her, "Whenever I come here, before my arrival, someone leaves flowers here, and I suspect it's my dad. Maybe he loved my mom so much." One day, John's sister comes to meet John and offers him double the amount of money, telling him to leave the restaurant and come back to his normal life. However, he rejects her offer. Before leaving, he takes a very expensive flower with him. When he returns, he sees that Jiangju has received some flowers from someone else, and she is holding the bouquet. He becomes so jealous that he tries to give her his flowers, saying, "Please don't accept flowers from anyone else except me." He even kisses her. But after that, he stands outside the restaurant for a long time. When he finally comes inside, he sees Jiangju in a completely different mood. She asks him, "Are you ready to take responsibility for what you did today? It's not like you can just ignore me as if nothing happened." She acts like a vampire, saying, "You provoked me, and now I might just devour you." He starts to like her acting, but then says, "If you keep acting like this, your waist will hurt. Please get up and get back to your normal self. And yes, to avoid being devoured by the vampire, I think I'll have to sleep outside tonight." She replies, "Fine, I get it. Go upstairs and sleep peacefully." He says, "After seeing what I saw today, how can I sleep peacefully in your room?" Meanwhile, we also learn that Jian is going to be wealthier than his brother because of an inheritance he's about to receive from his father. When Wan finds out that he's going to be richer than Mr. President Song, her jealousy resurfaces. She decides to follow Jian again and tries to separate him from Jiangju. To get rid of Jiangju, Wan and Hira plan together. It's then that we find out that Jiangju's mother has finally met her, and she comes to see her. Jiangju was shocked to see her mother, as she had never seen her since childhood, and suddenly, she was standing right in front of her. However, her mother was on a secret mission. Someone had assigned her the task of emptying the restaurant and leaving. In return, she would get paid. She shared everything, her joys and sorrows, with Jeon, telling him how excited she was to meet her mother. But for some reason, she didn't feel that excited. One day, John spots her mother somewhere. He follows her and finds out that she's going through a financial crisis and can't afford to relocate Jiangju or buy a new restaurant. It meant that someone must have been plotting something. John then learns the real reason why Jiangju's mother is so desperate. She has another daughter who is currently ill, and she needs money for her treatment. John helps by getting some money from his brother's shares and gives it to Jiangju's mother, telling her not to hurt Jiangju anymore. He calmly informs Jiangju about this, and she tells him, "Go and meet your mother," as she is leaving the city. Jiangju runs to the station and finally meets her mother, learning the reasons behind her actions. She also meets her younger sister for the first time. At this point, Jiangju understands that, as a mother, she may have acted selfishly, but now it's okay. Jiangju becomes upset and drinks, tearing up the contract, wondering why John is so nice and helps her with everything, but he doesn't accept her love. Meanwhile, Wan goes to John and says, "You've always loved me, right? I love you too, and I want to be yours." She does this because she knows that Jian is going to be the most powerful in his family, but Jian doesn't accept her love and sends her away. When Jiangju was drunk, Haeyang was sitting with her, and Jian came from behind to take care of her. Jiangju confesses, "I love John, and that's why I see him in your face." Haeyang had seen that they were sitting together and how she, in a drunken state, had confessed her feelings and realized that she really loved John. John then took her back to her room and reattached the contract. He told her that, in addition to the contract and restaurant, he wanted to give her something extra, himself. He said, "Jiangju, I give myself to you. I am yours." But she was asleep. The next morning, when she woke up, she couldn't remember anything from the previous night. She was very confused, thinking she had been with Huang. But how had she gotten home? She wanted to ask Huang but found him at home instead of the office. She went to his house, and while there, his shirt button broke. He asked her for help, and as she fixed the button, a few people from the village came and took pictures. These photos were later spread on social media, suggesting that Huang was about to marry and that he and Jiangju were dating. Huang, however, acted selfishly. He knew she had been with Jian the previous night, but he denied it, saying John wasn't there and that she had gone home by taxi, dropped off by the driver. John tried to explain, telling her who she had been with and who had brought her back, but Huang provoked her in such a way that she couldn't understand if Jean was telling the truth. She said to him, "You always prank me and never accept me. You're probably lying again." At this point, a new character is introduced. John's father, President Jin, who is portrayed as a very powerful and wealthy man, but also a very sad one. He wanted to meet his son, but couldn't gather the courage. We also learned that although he was a good man, he had been portrayed as a criminal. He had been involved in an accident that caused the death of Miss Kim's husband, the diving instructor. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison and was tagged as a criminal. However, those who knew him closely still recognized that he was not a bad person. Later, the village property dealer uncle shares this information with Jian and tells him that his brother, Song, is about to marry Miss Kim. But there's a twist. John's father, Mr. Jin, was the one who had killed Miss Kim's ex-husband. John gets scared and says, "My brother is not related by blood to my father. His father is different, and we only share the same mother. If my father has caused any problems in his life, I will never accept it." Jian had finally found his true love and began to blame himself as well as his father for the situation. So, when family had meetings, John avoided attending, staying away. He was happy for their joy, but didn't have the courage to face them. He felt that Miss Kim held a huge grudge against him and his father. Meanwhile, we see Jiangju, who is with Huang and his friends. She feels a coldness within herself, but then remembers that Jion had once told her that a sign of love is when you feel warm with the one you love. "You are always warm with me," he had said. As she tests this, she realizes it's true and confirms that maybe she could never move on from Jean. The love she had for him didn't stay the same, but rather grew stronger. Meanwhile, Jean was caught up in his own life problems due to his father. He was still in shock, but when he came to the restaurant, he saw Huang and many of his friends there. They were playing games, and in the midst of the game, a bet was made, leading to them forcing Jiangju to kiss Mayor Huang in front of everyone. John, seeing this, immediately pulled out his phone, ran to the scene, and told them that if they wanted to kiss, they should do it properly, and he kissed Jiangju in front of everyone. Jiangju, who had followed him outside, asked, "Do you want to date me? What do? You get jealous but never accept your feelings. Have some courage." He replies, "No, I can't date you because I'm leaving Jeju Island soon. I'm going far away." This takes us back to a flashback. The photo shown at the beginning of the movie was actually taken by President Jin, John's father. In the photo, John's mother is seen standing with Jiangju's father, as the two couples were close friends. But when the case against President Jin happened, John's mother refused to recognize anyone who knew him. Jiangju was now running the restaurant that belonged to John, and he was repeatedly telling the staff, "Take care of the restaurant until I return." But John replied, "Now you can rent it, but I will never come back." This left Jiangju feeling very sad. John was leaving the country because he didn't want his reality to be known, especially how his relationship with his brother might be ruined if anyone learned that his father had committed murder. He wanted to tell Jiangju the truth, but didn't know how, especially since it involved his father's hit-and-run case. Jiangju kept asking him about it, but Jian refused to tell her, saying, "I'm sorry, but there's a reason I have to leave this city and even this country." Later, we learn another reality from the property dealer uncle, who knew President Jin well. The truth was that when John's mother had fought with his father, she had taken his car and was chasing him. It was she who had run over Miss Kim's husband, but at the time, she was pregnant with John. His father didn't want her to spend so many years in prison or for his son to be born in jail. He took all the blame upon himself and never told anyone that John's mother had caused the accident. Now, the uncle, who had developed great affection for John and Jiangju, wanted to resolve the misunderstanding between them and hoped they would come together. He intended to guide them towards each other. Meanwhile, on the other side, Mayor Huang was all set to propose to Jiangju, having even bought a ring. He kept calling her, but the uncle, speaking with a lady's voice, told him, "Sorry, I won't be able to meet you today." Haeyang is confused and shocked, wondering why Jiangju is refusing to meet him and what has happened to her voice. But still, Jian doesn't lose sight of his goal. Once he was scared, and he had also given up. But now he tells her, "There's a way to leave from the back if you want to go." Jiangju then leaves, and finally, the wedding day arrives. Jian loves his brother very much, and for his brother's wedding, he even made food himself. He watches happily from a distance, and after that, he leaves the city. Jiangju is very sad about it. She thinks it's okay, but then she gathers her courage and says, "I will go and stop him no matter what." She follows him to the airport, but when she arrives, she doesn't find him. She sends him messages, confessing her love and asking him to come back. But by then, his phone is off, and her messages don't get delivered. The scene changes, and we see that more than a year has passed. Jiangju now has a baby, and she's taking very good care of him. The baby seems very attached to her, and it looks like he might even be her own child. On John the other side, John has returned. He realizes the truth about how his dad protected him, and he is no longer ashamed. He wants to come back because he knows that his brother and sister-in-law are in Japan right now. He arrives at his resort, and as soon as he arrives, his first encounter is with Jiangju, who is holding a baby. The baby looks very much like him. Jian is shocked and wonders how quickly she is married and had a baby. But soon, we find out that the baby is not hers. In reality, Jiangju is his aunt, and the baby belongs to her cousin, the one who had once deceived her and ran away with his money. This baby is actually her best friend's child. Later, John checks social media and finds some of the baby on Haeyang's account. One of the photos he sees is the same one where Jiangju is holding this baby. At one point, Huang had also seen this baby. Wan also came back and now seen with Jiangju sitting there and saying that I was also in Japan with John, and she was flexing the ring in her finger saying that she is soon marrying. At this, Jiangju replied that, "I know very well that John doesn't love you, and this ring must be for someone else. I won't be fooled by your tricks." On John, the other hand, Miss Kim has developed a very strong bond with John's brother. There was a lot of trust and love between them. During this time, they learned something important. It was revealed that it wasn't President Jin who killed her ex-husband, but rather the lady who would now be her mother-in-law. That lady was the one who had committed the murder. Miss Kim is deeply saddened by this news, but by now, her love for John's brother has grown so much that she couldn't even think about leaving him because of this. Finally, Miss Kim meets John and tells him, "You don't need to feel guilty about anything. It wasn't your fault, or anyone's fault. What was meant to happen, happened." Meanwhile, Jongju was waiting for Jion at home, having prepared everything. She had placed wine, light candles, and dressed beautifully. But Jion had no idea she was waiting for him this way. When he talks to her, he notices that she seems a bit disappointed when she falls asleep and thinks to himself how cute and sweet she is. He decides that he will give her all the love she deserves in life. The next day, Jangju plans to sell the house, but Jion stops her and says, "This house holds so many memories for us. I won't let you sell it. We will make this our beautiful home next to our restaurant." He even selects rooms for their children. After hearing all this, Jangju becomes very shy. Later, back at the restaurant, that night she tells John that she loves him and expresses her desire to enjoy every moment with him and go on a date. In response, he also tells her, "I love you too," and they share a kiss. Meanwhile, John finally discovers that his father was innocent and that Miss Kim had forgiven him. Miss Kim's husband had always loved his wife, and now President, that is John's brother, wanted to express the same kind of love towards Miss Kim. Later, Mr. Jin visits his son's restaurant and meets Jongju. He knew she was going to be his daughter-in-law, and he even eats the food she made. He's very happy but quietly leaves without telling anyone. John, on the other hand, was very happy with Jongju. Meanwhile, Hira's sister also enters Mayor Huang's life. She had even enrolled in the same driving school as him and was always sticking behind him on his bicycle. Finally, John and Jongju spend quality time together, talking about their feelings. John tells her, "I will never leave you, and as long as I live, I am yours." Together, they plan their wedding and discuss the arrangements, feeling warm and cozy with each other. And with that, the story ends on a happy note. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.